Acupuncturist Wife. Can you guys hear me okay? By Staats. A girl can be different, even extraordinary in a lot of ways. She can be unusually beautiful, or have a freakishly accurate memory for, say, 80s song lyrics. She can be born with club feet or crossed eyes or 6 toes, and all of those would be better than what makes me different. I'm afflicted, no, cursed, with migraines. Well, cursed, my friends all say. Isn't that kind of a strong word, Stephanie? But they can't even imagine the pain. It's awful. It lasts for days. There are drugs for migraines, but they don't work on me. I've tried everything. I've been to every sort of doctor, tried to harness my alpha waves. I've given up all my favorite things. Cheese, chocolate, Starbucks, and wine. Yes, even wine. All banished. I'm only 26. I shouldn't have to sacrifice like this. It's like every single drop of joy is gone from my life, and still, every week or so, this little twitch starts behind my shoulder blade, slithers up my neck and into my skull, finds the most tender spot, and then thrashes and whips and pounds until I just want to bash my head against a wall. Well, you would too. And then there's the advice on how to get rid of them. Everyone has a surefire home remedy, like, have you tried mugwort? It cured my Aunt Matilda's headaches. Or steam. Have you tried steam? But the very worst are the people who say, just a minute, I have an aspirin in my desk. Aspirin? Please. Aspirin is for their headaches. Every year, I've used up all my sick leave by February, and I have to drag myself to work every day, migraine or no migraine. I spend the day pressing my aching head between my hands and watching unprocessed insurance claims clog my in-basket. But staying home's no better. My boyfriend, Mike, keeps telling me I need to smoke more weed. Oh, that'll get rid of the migraines, he says, but Mike thinks more weed is the answer to practically everything. Which is why he's washed out of truck driving school 3 times and works in the warehouse at Target. About 3 months ago, we were sitting on the couch watching American Idol. He was eating pizza, and I, of course, was eating plain rice with a little soy sauce. And this thought just popped into my head. I punched him in the arm. Mike, I said, do you think my migraines might be because of some kind of alien parasite? No, he said. He waved to slice the pizza towards the screen. Watch, Simon's gonna kill this girl. Sure enough, she ran sobbing from the stage. Ha! I said, Miss Wimpy, you don't know pain. But something must have been stirring in the universe, because the next day, in the break room, Millie from the billing department slid into the seat next to me. Have you tried acupuncture? She said. Millie's always talking about healing circles and drinking tea that she brews from gnarled up roots that she buys at the co-op. The whole break room stinks when she makes the stuff. I give her a look. Needles? Like I need more pain? Oh, April's been going to see an acupuncturist for her arthritis, Millie said. Ha, that's not headaches, I said. Have you noticed her lately? Truth is, I had. April's desk is right across from mine, only I'm senior to her, even though she's older. She doesn't like that much, but that's how it goes. Lately, she has not been frowning and massaging her knobby hands every minute. Who does she go to, I said. So Millie got this guy's address from April, and I made an appointment right away. I've been going to my acupuncturist ever since, every Friday afternoon. In all honesty, he doesn't do a lot for my headaches. But I just love going there. His office is tucked away in one of those strip malls that have a cell phone store, a title company, a Starbucks, and a nail salon. Today I noticed the title company's closed, and there's a for rent sign in the window. Maybe they'll get a good Mexican restaurant in there. The sign on the door says, Brandon Lucas, Acupuncture and Chinese Herbs. A bell tinkles as you enter the reception room, and it's like you'd want your living room to be. Comfortable, with a couch full of pillows covered in Indian prints, a little fountain with pebbles humming away on the coffee table. Magazines about yoga and healthy living. In one corner, there's this most serene golden Buddha. The splash of water in the fountain along with the ferns hanging from the ceiling make me feel like I'm in someplace really peaceful, like Hawaii. The acupuncturist's wife is always there in a wink and holds the door open. Come in, she says, and leads me down a narrow back hall to one of the treatment rooms. She is Japanese, wears long skirts and cork-soled sandals, and moves without a sound. She and the acupuncturist have 3 grown children, all of them geniuses in music or astrophysics or something. When she writes out my appointment card, it's in the clearest, slightly slanted handwriting, and her spelling is perfect. I thought at first she had gone to Catholic school. But no, she was educated in Japan. Brandon studied acupuncture there with her father, which is how they met. He's always telling me this kind of personal detail. She hands me a clean cotton gown. Get to undress, please, she says. She speaks English with a bit of a Japanese accent. You know, the kind where they have a little trouble pronouncing their L's. She doesn't wear a name tag. Brandon told me her name once, but it was something odd, and I can't remember it. Open the door a crack when you're ready, she says. The treatment rooms are small and dimly lit. Each has a crystal the size of a robin's egg, hanging by an invisible thread in the window. Through the window, you can see the overgrown courtyard in the back, a wrought iron bench, calla lilies, and ivy. Very secret garden. So the routine is, I undress, take off my jewelry, slide into the gown, and lie face up on the padded table in the middle of the room. He'll put the needles in my front, and after a while, she comes in and takes them out. Then I flip over and he puts needles in my back. I'm usually there about an hour or so. Waiting for him is always a good personal moment for me. The room is warm and the music drifts down from the small black speakers perched like bats in the corner of the ceiling. I mean bats in a good way, not bats with rabies. Brandon downloads the music from numerous websites and he's fearless, just fearless. Jazz, rap, classical, you name it. He throws it all together like a great master chef of music, making up a big pot of sound soup fresh every day. Today I'm listening to something bouncy and classical, maybe Mozart, and I'm nearly falling asleep and I realize I forgot to crack the door. No matter. The door handle clicks, and here he is. Stephanie, he says, and closes the door behind him. Brandon is slender, wiry, of average height, and not Japanese, or even Chinese, or Filipino, or from one of those countries like Vietnam. He wears shirts of heavy blue silk that happen to match his eyes, and tan gabardine slacks that fit his hips to perfection. How are you doing? He sits on a stool and opens a folder. It's my chart. Any headaches? I think I might be starting one. I always give him a goal to work towards. And today, it's true. There's a twitch starting behind my right shoulder blade. Well, let's see. He closes my folder and places it on a stainless steel cart filled with metal trays full of needles, all very sanitarily wrapped in paper. He bends over me and presses my wrist with his fingers, and his honey-colored hair falls across his forehead. I inhale just a trace of lemon shampoo. He probes my shifting tendons to measure the several pulses, both the obvious beat of my heart and, yes, the more subtle internal rhythm of my liver and lymphatic systems. He holds my wrist for a long time, concentrates deeply, then lays my arm back down on my belly. He smiles, showing nearly every one of his big white California teeth. You are in such great balance, he says. I love it when he says that. I so admire him because I think he's probably had to struggle to gain acceptance. I mean, admit it. Don't you usually think acupuncturist equals Chinese person? Mm-hmm. But here he is, blonde hair and blue-eyed as any surfer dude. And his practice is very, very successful, as far as I know. He and his wife speak Japanese when discussing office business. They speak English with the patients, of course. Well, maybe not the Japanese ones. I'm just blown away when I hear Brandon speak Japanese with his perfectly formed California lips. I close my eyes. His fingers move over my body as he places the needles, seeming to slip them in between the cells of my skin. When he's finished, I have to lie still. A few minutes, he says, and he closes the door. I envision my body then, with the shining needles like minute hairs piercing my temples, behind my ears, in my forehead, my forearms, wrists, belly, and feet. Today, there's a needle at my breastbone, and a couple in the top of my head. He has never put needles there before. Miles Davis floats down from the bats in the ceiling. All blues, I'm pretty sure. And I start drifting to his heavenly horn as if I'm underwater and the needles are seagrass, swaying in the gentle current of my breath. And the one in my breastbone bobs like the mast on a boat, and the knot under my shoulder blade feels soft and slick and smooth like a pearl. Then it starts to feel a little rough and bigger, more like a barnacle. I think about the tube worms I saw in some nature program that Mike and I watched on TV. Those things that pop out of their crusty shells like snakes to feed on invisible micro-somethings. As I'm imagining that, the snaky part shivers up my neck and into my head. Shit, it's a headache. My acupuncturist has given me a headache. The damn thing dives and tumbles through my brain and my skull pops everywhere with pain. This is so unfair. I'm cursed. I'm infested. I might as well be dead. I start to cry. The tears slide down my cheek and into my hair and onto the leatherette cover of the table. This is so not like me. The acupuncturist's wife opens the door. I'll take the needles out now, she says. And as she works, the pain slides back and disappears with a pop, like a zit. Brandon enters the room. Hey, he says. He wets a cotton ball and wipes the side of my face. I was crying, I say. He wipes my temple. I see that. He hands the soggy cotton to his wife. I got a really bad headache the minute you left the room. I raise myself on my elbows. The needles in my face really hurt. Yeah, he says. Your mascara ran, and you bled a little too. He dabs at my face again. The red and black running down your face looked beautiful, kind of tribal. That's the kind of thing he says, totally unexpected. I'm distracted thinking about looking tribal, and I lie down again. Floating down from the ceiling is that version of Over the Rainbow by that enormous fat Hawaiian guy who died. I just love the sound of that ukulele. The two of them murmur in Japanese in the corner as they pick out the needles he'll use on my back. I feel euphoric, the way I usually do when a headache is over, so I sit up. Hey, I say. What, says the acupuncturist, not turning around. No headache, I say. Good, he says. It left when she took out the needles. It slithered back to where it came from, and then it popped. The acupuncturist's wife stops sorting needles and gives me her full and serious attention. And when it started, did you think of a pearl, she says. How do you know that, I say. And did it feel hot, long and skinny like a snake? I nod. This is weird. She tugs at the acupuncturist's sleeve and whispers in his ear. They stare at me with extreme interest, maybe a little fear. They move their heads together and they tilt their faces, and even though his eyes are blue and hers are brown, they look darkly identical. Motionless, blank and shining like the eyes of a dove. The staring goes on for a long time. I look at the floor, but the random white squiggles on the black linoleum make me dizzy. They speak softly, then more loudly, and the discussion becomes a real argument, quite a squabble, and I can't understand a word. They stop speaking. I raise my eyes. So, what's up? I say, as they're leaving the room. Be back in a few minutes, he says. It's not like me to wait patiently under such unexplained conditions, but I'm naked. Except for my underpants underneath this cotton gown. So I lie back down and I watch the crystal in the window shoot little rainbows onto the wall. Click and swish. The acupuncturist and his wife are back. More needles plink into the trays, and I see they brought the moxa, the stuff that looks like brown sugar cubes. She's sticking it on top of the needles. Brandon used it on me once before. They burn it, and the needles get hot. Brandon says that it intensifies their work. It smells like hot asphalt mixed with tobacco. We'll put the needles in now, says the acupuncturist's wife. What is going on, I say. The acupuncturist's wife frowns at me. Her mouth is a straight line, and there's no trace of her usual smile. She looks quite severe. I can see why all her children achieved at such a high level. Lie down, please, she says, and props me on my left side with bolsters. She turns my head so that it faces the ceiling and stuffs pillows under my jaw to hold me in position. Close your eyes, she says. Needles, more than usual, are being worked in along my spine, the base of my skull, my scalp, my ears, and into my face in a pattern that feels like the tattoos on the faces of the South Sea Islanders. I hear the soft slide of his thin-soled leather loafers and the swish of her skirt. Their humming speech. I smell his faint lemon scent and her trace of sandalwood, and it seems as if two sets of hands are setting the needles. What, I start to say, but the acupuncturist's wife lays her fingers on my lips. Hush, she says, and in spite of how weird this all is, I obey her. A few minutes, he says. He lights the moxa. I hear the door close. It's strange how the burning smell makes me sleepy and alert at the same time. I'm also very comfortable. I'm trying to relax. I'm also very uncomfortable. I'm trying to relax when the knot under my right shoulder blade jolts to life. No pearls here. A quick, fiery snake runs up my spine toward my head, but instead of thrashing around inside my skull, it races along the track laid out by the needles and streaks through the sinus above my right eyebrow, down past my tear ducts, and slides into the lower sinus, driving towards my nose. And bam, there she is. The acupuncturist's wife has been in the room the whole time. She's pressed against me, her belly hot against my back, and her sandalwood smell all jumbled up with the moxa. She jams a plastic bag over my nose, and something slithers out my nostril. The bag is smothering me. I struggle. I grab her wrist and try to pry her hands loose because the acupuncturist's wife is trying to kill me. Be still, she hisses, and holds me down with a strength I would not believed of her. Then she lets me go. I catch a huge breath and sit up. She backs off, clenching the plastic bag in her square brown fist. Inside is something thrashes and batters the sides of the bag. See, she says. The worm-like thing in the bag is darker on top than on the bottom, and the color is beautiful. The sort of glossy, peachy pink that you see on the insides of some shells. The kind you have to buy because you can't find them on the beach. What is that? Wait, it coils and uncoils in a familiar pattern, one I felt before inside my skull, and it's clearly suffering. Look, she says, look at the color. It slows down, resting between spasms. The fluid inside the bag turns reddish, like when you wash blood from a cut, and the ribbony edges of the flat body are gray. All that lively, gorgeous rosiness fades. Oh no, I say, and I reach for the bag. She moves it just beyond my reach, and I'm crying again. Twice in 1 hour. This is so not like me. The acupuncturist's wife hands me a tissue. Brandon opens the door. Everything okay? His wife thrusts the bag out and his head jerks back. God! He shuts the door. I hear him in the hall, hear the door to the next room open. The acupuncturist's wife peers closely at the thing. It's limp now and seems drowned. She pours the liquid into a jar and slides the flattened worm from the bag onto a tray, like a piece of fish ready to go into the oven. She turns back to me. Lie down, please. I curl on my side, hug my knees, and I close my eyes. The word bereft pops into my mind. And this is not a word I use often. In fact, it might be the first time outside of junior high vocabulary list. She works quickly, removing the needles. You are not asking, but I will tell you, she says. Sometimes the chi gets caught like food in tooth and winds in on itself. The cells pack together like your little worm. She plucks the needles from my back. It is unusual. We have to set the needles just right, light the muksa to force it out. The door clicks open. The acupuncturist is back. My auntie had this also, she whispers. She also felt sad when it was gone. They both remove the needles. Hands pass delicately over my skin. They finish, and she runs her hands lightly over my whole body, checking for stragglers. I'll see you when you're dressed, says Brandon, and slips from the room. Lie on your stomach now, she says. I dangle my hands over the sides of the table and rest my right cheek on the sticky leather. She places both hands at the top of my spine and strokes firmly and slowly down toward my butt and back again. She's plenty strong. Then she cups her hands around my skull and pulls my head gently away from my backbone, rubs my scalp with tickling fingertips, and finishes with a slow, smooth stroke of her hand on my left cheek, then a harder pat. No more headaches, she says. A wailing harmonica solo, the intro to something, slides down from the ceiling. Either the music's been off or I haven't been noticing it. A rough voice starts to sing Blue Skies, the phrasing a little off the beat. After she leaves, it takes me longer than usual to get dressed. I can't remember where I put my earrings. I find them beside the tray where the acupuncturist's wife left the worm thing. It has completely dried out, like a lost contact lens. It looks like a crumpled piece of hard plastic. I pick it up, wrap it in a tissue, and tuck it into my jacket pocket. The acupuncturist's wife is seated at her desk in the office and is moving the mouse around, frowning at her computer screen. I write my check. Brandon walks into the office and sits on her desk. He leans on his hand, and the silky sleeve of his shirt drapes over it like a curtain. See you in 2 weeks. His wife is scrolling down some website. She has no headaches now, she says. But we want to keep her in balance, don't we? He gives me his big square grin, and I twinkle back, and there's some considerable wattage between us. I start to pull out my iPhone. The acupuncturist wife looks at me, and her smile just curls the ends of her lips. I think Stephanie should call us if she needs to. Brandon's grin dissolves. He stands and steps away from the desk. I know they're about the same age, yet he has lines in his forehead and wrinkles in his neck, and she does not. Funny, I never noticed. I drop the phone back into my bag. Good idea, I say. Good luck, she calls as I leave. That night, Mike and I eat in front of the TV as usual, and I tell him about what happened in the acupuncturist's office. He stares at me. Really? He says. And the truth is, as I'm telling it, I don't quite believe it myself. Wait, I'll show you, I say. And I pull the wadded up tissue out of my jacket pocket. I'm thinking maybe I can soak the dried worm in some salt water and it'll swell up, like when you drop water on the crumpled up cover of a straw. But when I open it, there's only a little scatter of shiny crystalline dust. It's gone, I say, and the puff of my breath flings the tiny particles toward my face. There's a whiff of ammonia and a tiny hint of sandalwood, and then I sneeze, a huge eruption that shoots me up off the couch. Gesundheit, Mike says. I feel like the sneeze has set me down in a different direction, and I don't know whether to say thank you or not. My nose is dripping like a kid's. Get me a tissue, will you? Mike hoists his skinny body from the sofa and lopes into the kitchen. I hear the rip of tissue from the box, hear him rummage in the refrigerator, the clink of a glass against a wine bottle. I wipe my nose on my sleeve and my arm moves easily, the shoulder blades sliding smoothly. In fact, my whole back feels loose and relaxed. I sit down and I wiggle against the couch cushions. There's not even a grain of irritation behind my shoulder blades. I should feel good about it, but I don't. Bring me a glass of wine, will you? I say. Mike appears in the doorway, bottle and water tissues in hand. You sure? Why not, I say. I've got 5 toes like everyone else. He gives me a funny look. Whatever, he says. He brings the open bottle, pours us both a glass of wine, and sits beside me. He flicks the remote. On comes a show he's recorded from one of those cable channels way up in the 300s. A channel completely devoted to medical weirdness. 110 people who can't get out of bed and people with so many warts their skin looks like tree bark. Mike watches it for hours late at night, and when he comes to bed, he runs his hands all over my skin checking for warts. Look at that, he says. It's a highly magnified parasite whipping around in a little sack, and apparently it's causing some poor woman all kinds of trouble. What are her symptoms? He says. His headaches. I bet that's what you had. Could be, I say. I take a tiny sip of wine. Mike drapes his arm around me and clinks my glass with his. Happy, he says. I lift my glass and I take a big swallow. Sure, I say. On the TV screen, the woman, now apparently free of parasites, picnics with her husband and children at the beach. They're all sun and sand and happiness. But I know that any minute now a child will cry or her husband will need his beer opened, and she'll be the one taking care of them. Oh, she's had her little special moment, and you can bet it's over now. I wonder if the woman on the beach feels as empty and ordinary as I do. I wonder what she's going to do about it.
Ashley. Thank you, Sue. We're going to take a short break, but first, Valerie has an announcement.